Laws are created to keep order, but sometimes order sounds like a grumpy neighbor, standing behind the curtain, holding a violation notebook, just waiting for you to breathe wrong. Today we're talking about 31 laws that sound completely made up, but are absolutely real. Each one is a situation you could accidentally fall into, like you're just living your peaceful life, and suddenly you're the main character in a low-budget dark comedy. Our running gag tonight sounds fake, right, but it's real. Watch until the end, then come back and tell me the dumbest law in your state. Who knows, your neighbor might be reading the rulebook right behind you. Story 1. Singapore, borrowing Wi-Fi can be treated like hacking. You just want to post a story, not overthrow the government, not hack the Pentagon. Just upload a first-time eating chili crab photo before it gets cold. You're a tourist, out of data, battery at 12%, airport-level panic. You open your phone and see an unlocked Wi-Fi network. The name even sounds friendly, something like Home Sweet Home. You think borrowing it for a minute can't hurt. In many places that's called being resourceful, but in Singapore they don't call it cheap, they call it unauthorized access to a computer system, which sounds like you just knocked on NASA's door. Here's the twist. Open Wi-Fi doesn't mean you're invited. It's like an unlocked door, not because they love sharing, but because they assume you have manners. Gentle lesson at the end. Here, a password doesn't just protect the network, it protects your criminal record. Story 2. UAE, even a swear emoji can turn into a case. One little icon in a chat can turn into legal trouble. Not because it's ugly, but because the law here doesn't see emojis as just for fun. In the UAE, insults, profanity, or obscene gestures, even online, can be punished seriously. Yes, even that middle finger emoji you send like it's finger cardio. Picture this. You're arguing in a group chat. Someone says something dumb. You see red. You don't type a single word. You just drop A to save time. In many places, that's called drama. Here, that's called evidence. Here's the twist. A screen doesn't make words lighter. It records everything in crisp, high-definition detail. And the final line sounds like your mom, but she was right. Think before you text, especially when you're at the airport and your return ticket is not flexible. Story 3. Japan. Bringing cold medicine turns into a formal explanation. You think you're just carrying cold medicine. Customs looks at it and sees a controlled substance. In Japan, some over-the-counter meds, the kind you casually grab at home, contain ingredients that are tightly regulated. Back home, it's just extra strong decongestant. Here it sounds like the title of a legal document. Scene, you just landed after a long flight. Your head feels like it's full of bricks. Your nose is completely blocked. You can't breathe. You pull out the blister pack right at the customs counter, planning to take one pill just to function like a human. The air suddenly slows down. The officer's expression shifts from friendly to attentive. And just like that, your treating a cold trip turns into explaining chemical ingredients. Here's the twist. In your mind, you did nothing wrong. But the law doesn't read intentions. The law reads labels. Quiet lesson, but it sticks. Before you zip your suitcase, Google carefully. Because here, a tiny ingredient can make you sweat real fast. Story 4. Milan, Italy, smiling in public is mandatory. Your face isn't bad. It just might be illegal. In Milan, there's an old regulation requiring people to maintain a cheerful expression in public, except at funerals and hospitals. Yes, basically, if you're not officially grieving, you should look like you just won free Fashion Week tickets. Scene, you're 14 hours jet-lagged. You slept exactly 3 hours. Your caffeine level is below zero. You're standing at a tram stop, face scrunched up like life just unsubscribed from you. In theory, you should be smiling. Here's the twist. When you force a smile while exhausted, it doesn't look like sunshine. It looks like side character in a horror movie hiding a secret. So there you are, trying to look happy while wondering if your facial muscles are overacting. Soft but logical conclusion. If a city requires happiness, it should at least sponsor free espresso. Smiling on empty energy is a big ask. Story 5. England, being drunk in a pub can be illegal. You walk into a pub, you order a beer, you drink it, you get drunk. Sounds like a reasonable storyline, right? Plot twist that could be a violation. In England, there are laws allowing fines for public intoxication and even for bar owners if they let customers get too drunk. Meaning you just fulfilled the entire purpose of a pub and simultaneously broke the rules. Scene. The bartender isn't just pouring drinks. They're watching you like an Olympic judge. Third pint already. Laughing a little louder now. Walking slightly zigzag. Suddenly the vibe feels less like Friday night and more like a sobriety exam with supervision. Here's the twist. A pub is for drinking. But if you drink too successfully, you might become an illegal achievement. So now you must reach that magical balance, happy but not too happy. Buzzed but still able to pronounce your own name. Final thought, congratulations. You completed the pub's mission and failed legally at the same time. Cheers moderately. Story 6. Scotland drunk while handling cattle. One man, one cow, and a charge that sounds like a sitcom title. In Scotland, it's illegal to be drunk while in charge of livestock. Yes, not just cars need sober drivers. Cows do too. Scene A: farmer goes to market, sells some milk, runs into an old friend. Just a couple drinks to warm up. All good, until it's time to walk the cow home. The cow walks straight. The owner, creative footwork. Light zigzag energy. Here's the twist. This isn't the DUI you're thinking of. This is the cow edition. No steering wheel, no seatbelt, just a 300-pound animal looking at you like, "Sir, are you okay?" The law here is simple. If you're responsible for the animal, you must be sober enough so it doesn't become responsible for you. Soft but deep conclusion. In Scotland, even cows deserve a sober guardian. Story 7. France, you can't name a pig Napoleon. You just want to name your pet for fun. But accidentally, you bump into history. In France, mocking or insulting national symbols can be taken seriously. And yes, the name Napoleon, linked to one of the country's most iconic historical figures, is not exactly meant for a pig rolling in the mud. Scene A: small farm. The owner looks at a chubby pig and jokes, "He looks powerful. Let's call him Napoleon." Everyone laughs. The pig has no objections. But the law does not have a sense of humor. Here's the twist. The French can appreciate clever satire, but when it touches a national symbol, the smile can quickly turn into paperwork. Strange little lesson here. In some places, an insult doesn't start on a political stage, it can start in a pig pen. Story 8. Eswatini, witches can't fly higher than 150 meters. No one said you can't be a witch. Just, if you're flying a broom, please stay under 150 meters. Aviation safety first, magic second. In Eswatini, there was once a regulation treating broom flying above a certain height as a violation of aviation law. Yes, a fairy tale accidentally collided with air traffic control. Seen you ask a local about it. They explain it casually like they're discussing a speed limit. Yeah, just fly low. Don't disturb the airplanes. And you're standing there thinking, is this folklore or is this Hogwarts with a civil aviation authority? Here's the twist. It sounds mystical, but the tone is extremely administrative, not ban magic. Just regulate the altitude. So in this place, even supernatural powers need to review compliance guidelines before takeoff. Soft but logical conclusion. You're free to fly. Just don't exceed the legal ceiling. Story 9. Sweden, spontaneous dancing requires a permit. In some places, spontaneous joy is adorable. Here it might require paperwork. In Sweden, there used to be a rule requiring venues to obtain a special permit if customers wanted to dance. Not because dancing is dangerous, just because if too many people are having fun at the same time, the authorities would like a heads up. Scene A: small bar. The music hits that one song you physically cannot sit through. One person stands up, starts moving, then two more join. The vibe rises, and somewhere nearby, security is staring at the dance floor like they just detected unauthorized happiness. Here's the twist: no one is fighting. No chaos, they're just dancing. But if the venue doesn't have the proper permit, those innocent spins can turn into administrative concerns. Just like that party softly shifts into procedure. Interesting takeaway. Here fun doesn't just need a DJ, it needs approval before the beat drops. Story 10. Monaco citizens can't gamble in Monte Carlo. The casino is glowing. Lights flashing. Tourists walk in like they're auditioning for a James Bond movie. And Monaco citizens, they watch from outside. In Monaco, citizens are banned from gambling in the Monte Carlo casinos. Yes, the place famous for roulette and baccarat is not for the people who actually live there. Scene: you an excited tourist show your passport. You're welcomed in. Your friend born and raised in Monaco steps forward, politely, firmly, stopped. You go inside to test your luck. He stays outside testing his patience. Here's the twist. This is a reverse VIP club. Normally locals get priority. Here you have to be a foreigner to play. It sounds strange, but the logic is crystal clear. Monaco makes money from international visitors, not from its own citizens' pockets. Smart little conclusion. This place built casinos for the world, and a fence to protect the people inside it. Story 11. Finland, speeding fines based on your income. You're rich or great, but when it comes to traffic tickets in Finland, that just means you pay more. Here they use a day fine system. Your penalty is calculated based on your income. Not the same flat number for everyone. Same mistake. Different bank account impact. Seeing a successful businessman drives his luxury car a little over the speed limit. He thinks, all right, a few €100. Express lane fee. The officer hands him the ticket. He looks down, looks again, checks to see if there's an extra zero by accident. There isn't. Here's the twist. The number on that paper is strong enough to sober him up without a single drop of alcohol. Because here, the law wants the punishment to feel equal for everyone. No such thing as rich people treating fines like parking fees. Quiet but expensive lesson. In Finland, speed isn't just measured in km/h. It's priced according to your salary. Story 12. Brazil, voting is mandatory. In some places, voting is a right. In Brazil, it feels more like homework with a deadline. The law requires citizens within a certain age range to vote. Skip it, and you can face fines and a surprising amount of administrative inconvenience. Sounds minor until you need paperwork. Seeing a politically uninterested guy decides to skip election day. Sleeping in feels more productive. Months later, he applies for a passport to travel. The system checks his record, then calmly reminds him, you forgot one small thing, to vote. Here's the twist. No one debates politics with you. No dramatic arguments. They simply say complete your civic duty first. Then we talk. No chaos, no shouting. Just a checklist missing one box. Sharp but accurate conclusion. Here democracy isn't just the freedom to choose, it's homework. And yes, it's due on time. Story 13. Philippines. Driving depends on your license plate number. Here you don't decide whether you're driving today. The last digit on your license plate does. The Philippines uses a number coding system. On certain weekdays, cars with specific ending digits are banned from the roads to reduce traffic. Sounds reasonable. Until it's your number. Scene. You wake up. Dress sharp. Coffee ready. You step toward your car, quick phone check, and then it hits you. Today is the day your car is banned. Not because it's broken, not because you're out of gas, but because there's a 7 at the end of your plate. Here's the twist. Every week feels like roulette. You don't know which day you'll lose until Monday shows up. So you're not late because of traffic. You're late because of math. Soft, but real conclusion. Here traffic isn't just about roads. It's a weekly numbers quiz. Story 14. Ontario, Canada. No whistling at night. After 11 p.m., your joy might need volume control. In some areas of Ontario, there are rules banning whistling from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. unless it's an emergency. Yes, you can call 911. Just don't do it in your favorite pop melody. Scene A guy takes a late night walk. Cool air, great mood. He starts whistling a catchy tune. A window slides open. A neighbor looks down like they're narrating a true crime documentary. Someone genuinely considers calling the police. Here's the twist. The law doesn't hate music. It just wants quiet hours respected. But the real question is spontaneous happiness an emergency? You're not throwing a party. You're just providing a soundtrack. Soft, slightly sarcastic conclusion. Here happy noise isn't fully free. It needs moral approval or at least a 7 a.m. alarm clock. Story 15. Iceland. Beer was banned until 1989. In some places, vodka was acceptable, but beer absolutely not. In Iceland, beer was banned for decades and only became legal in 1989. Yes, while the rest of the world had MTV Big Hair and all kinds of questionable trends, Icelanders still couldn't legally order a simple lager. Seeing you walk into a bar. Tourist smile ready. 1 beer, please. An older man at the counter chuckles. He tells you about the days when beer was basically contraband. People had to mix drinks secretly DIY style, like a chemistry experiment, just to create something with bubbles. Here's the twist. It sounds like a comedy sketch, but it's real history. Hard liquor fine, light friendly beer, problematic, interesting little takeaway. In one corner of the world, a glass of beer used to be more dangerous than you'd think. And 1989 wasn't just a music milestone. It was the year beer became free. Story 16. Paraguay, dueling is legal. If you're a registered blood donor, revenge. Sure, but please do a good deed first. In Paraguay, there was once a rule allowing duels as long as both participants were registered blood donors. Yes, honor came with civic responsibility. You want to settle a dispute the old-fashioned way. Great. But first, help the hospital save a few lives. Scene 2, men arguing fiercely in a public square. Tension tight as a guitar string. One says, "Let's settle this like men." The other nods, and then they both go sign up to donate blood. Here's the twist. This might be the only time in history where community service and firearms appear in the same sentence. It sounds like a comedy sketch, but the logic is strangely practical. If you're about to create risk, at least contribute something first. Perfectly ironic conclusion. Here you could duel as long as you remembered to stop by the hospital beforehand. Story 17. South Australia, disrupting a wedding is a crime. The ex shows up at the wedding. In Hollywood, that's peak romance. In South Australia, that could be a case file. Here, intentionally disrupting or obstructing a wedding can lead to serious penalties. Meaning, if you're planning to burst into a church yelling, "I object" with dramatic tears, you might want to consult a lawyer first. Scene. The bride and groom are exchanging vows. The doors fly open. Someone appears breathing hard like they just ran a marathon of love. Stop the wedding. Instead of emotional music swelling, guests start reaching for their phones to call the police. Here's the twist. The rom-com you thought you were starring in switches genres to crime drama in about 30 seconds. No kissing in the rain, just paperwork and potential fines. Clear conclusion. If you want to object, schedule a meeting with a judge. A wedding is not an audition to reclaim the lead role. Story 18. Switzerland, no nude hiking. You want to reconnect with nature. Majestic mountains, fresh air. Return to your natural state. Very zen, very spiritual. The law, however, would prefer you keep your clothes on. In Switzerland, there have been rulings fining public nudity even if you're just enjoying nature on a hiking trail. The Alps may be free. Your freedom has boundaries. Scene A tourist decides to try the 100% organic experience. He walks confidently through the mountains. Meanwhile, a local spots him and experiences a cultural shock not included in the travel brochure. Here's the twist. The scenery is undeniably beautiful, but social norms are beautiful too in a very serious way. You can rebel, just maybe add a jacket. Clear but gentle conclusion. In Switzerland, nature can be wild. Humans should probably not be. Story 19. London, shaking a rug. After 8 a.m. was illegal. In London, even dust has office hours. There used to be regulations limiting when you could shake a rug out of a window, and if you did it after 8 a.m., you could technically be in violation. Yes, your rug needed to respect business hours. Scene. You're staying in an Airbnb. Determined to live like a local. Morning light. You notice the rug's a little dusty. You lean out the window, give it a few confident shakes. Feeling productive, domestic, responsible. And then a voice from somewhere politely but firmly lets you know you've just committed a scheduling error. Here's the twist. A tiny doormat could get more flexibility in some cases. But the big rug. Please consult the timetable. It sounds like a Monty Python sketch, but it was once real regulation. Very British conclusion. In London, cleanliness isn't just a virtue, it's a timed appointment. Story 20. Germany, offices must have a window to the sky. In Germany, you have the right not to work like you're inside a submarine. Labor laws and building standards require workplaces to have natural light and a connection to the outside world, meaning an actual window facing the real sky, not a motivational poster of one. Scene A startup proudly shows off its sealed studio office. Bright white LED lights on 24/7. No difference between day and night. They call it focus mode. Germany looks at that and calmly says, 9. Here's the twist. It sounds like a meme. Please let me see the sun. But it's deeply human. The body needs sunlight. Circadian rhythm. Proof that the world still exists outside of Excel. You can be drowning in deadlines, but you still deserve to watch clouds move. Simple and beautiful conclusion. Here the sky isn't decoration. It's a workplace, right? Story 21. Cambodia, water guns banned during New Year. Buckets of water. Fine. Big tubs of water. Also fine. But water guns. Sorry. That sounds too tactical. During certain New Year celebrations, Cambodia has banned the sale and use of water guns over concerns about public disorder and accidents. Yes, it literally shoots water. Scene A tourist shows up with a giant super soaker, like it's a prop from an action movie. Festival mode activated. 5 minutes later, his childhood toy gets confiscated like he tried to import military equipment. Here's the twist. The thing you see as a kid's toy can be viewed as a public safety risk, not because water is dangerous, but because chaos can start with one perfectly aimed stream at someone driving a motorbike. Soft but logical conclusion. You're allowed to have fun, just maybe without a trigger and a 10-meter shooting range. Story 22. South Africa livestock have the right of way. You're late for a meeting, traffic ahead is completely stuck. Not an accident, not construction, but cows. In South Africa, livestock on the road often have legal priority, meaning if a flock of sheep decides to cross the highway like it's Fashion Week, you're the one waiting. Scene. You start getting impatient. Light horn tap. A local turns to you, points at the law sign, and shrugs like the cows have their schedule. The cow in front of you looks back like it's the CEO of this entire roadway. Here's the twist. This might be the most legally correct traffic jam of your life. No one is breaking rules. No one is wrong. You're just inside an ecosystem where animals have official priority. You can try road rage. But road rage doesn't work on a sheep peacefully chewing grass. Gentle conclusion. Here, if you argue with livestock over the road, the law sides with the fur. Story 23. Boulder, Colorado. No random boulders on your lawn. The city's name is Boulder. And yes, they can restrict you from putting a boulder on your lawn. Local regulations may limit placing large rocks in your yard if they're not part of an approved landscaping plan, meaning rocks are allowed but preferably with paperwork. Scene. You decide to design your yard with a minimalist nature vibe. One large artistic rock. Very zen. Very architectural. You feel like a landscape visionary. Your neighbor feels like you're testing zoning laws and makes a call. Here's the twist. The irony is almost poetic. A city called Boulder asking you to think carefully before placing an actual boulder. It's not that they hate rocks, they just prefer rocks within regulation. Puzzle-like conclusion, the city is Boulder, but if your boulder isn't compliant, it might turn into a legal situation. Story 24. Nevada, no riding camels on the highway. It sounds like a joke, but America once took camels seriously enough to pass laws about them. In the 19th century, the U.S. Army experimented with the Camel Corps, importing camels to transport supplies across the Southwest desert. On paper, desert plus camels equals success. Spoiler, not exactly. When the program failed, some camels were released and reportedly wandered around like influencers without management. Eventually, Nevada ended up with regulations prohibiting riding camels on public highways. Scene. Imagine driving down the highway and seeing someone on a camel ahead of you. Not a parade, not a movie set, just Tuesday. Here's the twist. A failed military strategy left behind a rule that sounds like a punchline. Simple conclusion, the camels are gone, the law remains. And that's why Nevada highways have fewer humps than you'd expect. Story 25. Kentucky. No dying baby animals for retail sale. A pink baby chick potentially illegal. 6 at once. Now it sounds like wholesale. Kentucky has regulations aimed at preventing people from dying baby animals and selling them as novelty gifts because after the holiday ends, many of those adorable pets get abandoned. The law is basically saying cute impulse buys have consequences. Scene A shop displays pastel pink chicks that look like living Instagram filters. An inspector walks in, not to compliment the color palette, but to count. One odd chick problem. 5 chicks still tense. 6 or more. Now we're in bulk transaction territory. Here's the twist. There's a strangely mathematical loophole. Same action, different quantity. Suddenly it sounds different, but the goal is clear. Baby animals are not seasonal accessories. Soft but meaningful conclusion. The law protects animals. Yet when math gets involved, the whole thing starts to sound like a slightly absurd word problem. Story 26. Iowa. Getting paid to play piano with one hand, not so fast. You're allowed to play music. Just don't expect to get paid if you're playing with one hand. Iowa once had a strangely specific regulation limiting one-handed piano performances for profit in certain contexts. Not banning music, not banning pianos, just one hand. Seen a talented pianist performs with incredible one-handed technique. The crowd is impressed. Tips start dropping into the jar. The vibe is artistic, inspiring, very follow your passion. Then someone leans in and whispers, "Technically, this might be complicated." Here's the twist. The immediate question is, what exactly happened in Iowa that forced lawmakers to get this specific? Because you don't write a law like that without a backstory. It sounds like the setup to a punchline, but it once existed on paper. Soft, sarcastic conclusion, passion encouraged, talent applauded, getting paid for it, depends on how many hands you're using. Story 27. Canada comic books with crime scenes were once banned. Superman catches the robber. The city is saved, and the comic book might be a legal problem. During a wave of moral panic, Canada once passed laws banning comic books that portrayed criminal acts in ways considered to glorify or highlight crime. The intention sounded noble: protect the children. The result? An entire comic industry started sweating. Scene parents worry because their kids are reading fight scenes. Politicians make speeches. Newspapers amplify the fear. And suddenly a law is born like a superhero, slightly aiming at the wrong villain. Here's the twist. The biggest villain wasn't Joker or Lex Luthor. Sometimes it was legislation written a little too broadly. You could draw a hero fighting for justice, but if the panel was interpreted the wrong way, the whole book could vanish from shelves. Bittersweet conclusion. In some places you could save the world on paper and still get banned from printing it. Story 28. Bolivia. A law once limited married women to one drink. One glass of wine, elegant lady. A second glass under an old rule that could become a problem. Bolivia once had regulations restricting married women from drinking more than one alcoholic beverage in public based on arguments about order and morality. It sounds like a 1952 sitcom script, but it was written into actual law. Scene: a married couple at dinner. The husband orders a second drink. No reaction. The wife considers doing the same. Suddenly there's that subtle look, "Ma'am, you've reached your quota." Here's the twist. This isn't the kind of absurd that makes people chuckle. It's the kind that makes the comment section explode in all caps. The rule reflected a time with very clear gender bias. Straightforward conclusion. Some laws aren't funny because they're quirky. They're funny in the way that makes you shake your head and ask, really? Story 29. China. A law requiring children to visit their parents. You're busy. Deadlines everywhere. Your mom texts, "When are you coming home?" You're about to reply, "Soon," for the 47th time. Here, that might not be enough. China has laws requiring adult children to visit and care for their parents' emotional well-being. Not just family values, potential legal responsibility. Scene: a son keeps postponing his trip home. Work first, always work first. Then one day, instead of a guilt text, he receives a court notice. Plot twist: nobody had on their bingo card. Here's the twist. What most people consider a moral duty is written down as an actual statute. Call your mother upgraded to comply with regulations. It sounds serious, almost surreal. Final line that feels like clickbait but isn't. Here, ghosting your parents doesn't just create family drama, it could create a lawsuit. Story 30. Turin, Italy. You must walk your dog 3 times a day. In Turin, your dog doesn't just have a name, it has a fitness quota. Local regulations require owners to take their dogs out multiple times a day or risk a fine, meaning if you're feeling lazy, your wallet will be doing the cardio instead. Scene: you think, maybe we skip one walk today. Your dog looks at you like it just read Section 3, Paragraph B. I am legally entitled to fresh air. The neighbors start noticing, not because they're nosy, but because apparently they care about canine civil rights. Here's the twist. Suddenly the owner becomes the suspect for lack of exercise, not for themselves, for the dog. It sounds funny, but the idea is actually kind. Pets are not sofa decorations. Very Italian conclusion. The law is so thoughtful it gets specific. And while it sounds a little over-detailed, at least here, no dog gets ghosted from walk time. Story 31. Connecticut. A pickle must bounce to be a pickle. In Connecticut, a pickle doesn't just need to be sour. It needs bounce. There was once a food dispute that led to a strangely specific standard. To be officially recognized as a pickle, it had to be firm enough to bounce slightly when dropped on a hard surface. Yes, this is not a basketball tryout. This is pickle inspection. Scene: a food inspector holds up a pickle, drops it on the table like they're testing the rebound of a sneaker. Everyone watches. The pickle bounces. A subtle nod? Approved. Here's the twist. As ridiculous as it sounds, this legal definition came from product fraud. Some vendors were selling subpar cucumbers and still calling them pickles. So the law stepped in the most Connecticut way possible. Emotional crunchy conclusion. If it doesn't bounce, it's not a pickle. It's just a soggy cucumber. And a crisp disappointment. 31 laws. They sound fake, like a 2 a.m. meme someone made out of boredom. But they're real enough to come stamped with an official red seal. Each one is a slice of history, fear, morality, and sometimes bureaucracy with way too much free time. Very American takeaway. The world isn't short on weird laws. It's short on people who read carefully before booking a flight and thinking, it'll probably be fine. Now it's your turn. Drop the dumbest law from your state, city, school, or workplace in the comments. The wildest one gets pinned. Stay legal, stay curious, and remember, sometimes your biggest enemy isn't a villain. It's an old law nobody bothered to delete.